Hello and welcome to Unacademy. I welcome you all to the fourth session of our high yielding areas for UPSC and history. And in this, we will now pivot after doing Buddhism, then Jainism, then doing temple architecture. We will now today pivot towards modern India. And there are three basic parts to what is called as the Indian national movement, which are generally considered important for the examination, both prelims and mains. Today is 1885 to 1915, which basically is early nationalism as it is called. Then there's 1915 to 40 or 42, which is Gandhian phase with, you can say, Gandhi, Bose, and the Second World War in the end part of it. And then is the last phase, which is 42 to 47, which is called popular nationalism. And in the same way, we are going to cover it, maybe not in three, but four parts, because from 15 to 42, it will become very big. So the idea is today's episode, we do 1885 to 15, then we'll do 15 to 1935, then we'll do 1935 to 42, and then we'll do 1942 to 47, thereby completing the national movement in the next four episodes. Now, the reason why I am breaking it into four episodes is because the purpose of this lecture is very different to vis-a-vis a marathon or something which we've already done. The idea is very simple, that I want to go into the smaller parts, the ideas which are generally considered important, and discuss both prelims and mains level understanding. So, for the next four episodes, let's discuss the national movement properly. Also, one thing, that I am conducting a test for Buddhism and Jainism as a special session, which is a free session on 14th, which is tomorrow, 14 July, at 3 p.m. I will hold a test. The link to that test is in the description box. You will find it in our Telegram channel also. You'll find it in my Telegram channel also. The reason being that I would like you to also evaluate your preparation once you've gone through these videos. Similarly, for these four videos, I will conduct two tests in the next, you can say, 2 weeks. And the idea is again to integrate everything together. So, Indian National Movement 1885 to 1915. Let's discuss what we have to cover generally. And in this Telegram channel, you'll find the test link. Further, if you need a PPT or you want any form of guidance, this is the Telegram channel. Also, we are running 16999 plus double validity plus CSC Assure. The lowest price with double validity with CSC Assure. This type of offer has not come in this combination per se. And you have to use the code IS English to be tagged to our team at the same point of time to unlock all of these things. So you have to use the code IS English without space, and you will unlock all of these. If you have ever thought of joining an academy, this may be the best time to do that. Now, when we talk about 1885 to 1915, I would like to concentrate on the following events. First is obviously formation of INC, safety valve theory, because that is where the ideas of what is called as mains comes through. Then further, we will discuss moderates and their role. We have seen questions out of this area. We'll talk about extremism, rise of extremism. Then we will also talk about Swadeshi. And the last major topic which I want to do here is Surat split. Lucknow Pact, Home Rule League, we will do in the next episode, so that it is evenly distributed, does not become too heavy per se. So 1916 would be Home Rule League also, Lucknow Pact also, and we'll try to cover revolutionaries also, but that I will do separately. I will not do it as part of this. I will here try to basically go with the INC and its development. Revolutionaries phase one, phase two, which is 1897 to 1915, and then 1924 to 31. I will do in one video, which is called Revolutionaries, which I'll do separately. Now, the first and the foremost aspect is, why is this year 1885 so important? 1885 is generally considered extremely important because this is the year of the formation of the Indian National Congress. Now, when the Indian National Congress, initially known as Indian National Union, when it will meet in December of 1885, There were 72 members, but there was also a British officer, a retired ICS officer, his name A.O. Hume, who was present in the room. Now, because of the presence of A.O. Hume and because of the nature of the INC, which is going to be moderate for the next 20 years per se, there has been a lot of criticism and lot of, you can say, theories on why did the INC emerge in 1885. And that is where the first major theory of origin is called as the safety valve theory. This was basically created on a concept which came out of Wedderburn's biography of AOU and also the criticism of Lala Lajpat Rai, R.P. Dutt, and R.C. Dutt over the idea that you are nothing but a safety valve, a illusion, or a body which was created by the British. Now, what Lala Lajpat Rai says is a frustration with moderate politics. It is not per se a theory which he's propounding, but Wedderburn was able to propound this idea, which is the safety valve. Let's talk about what this safety valve theory mean. Now, when we talk about safety valve theory, the idea is very simple. Aoyum read 7 volumes of intelligence report in 1884-85. He met Dufferin. Dufferin, he told that there is another 1857 coming, an armed revolt coming because people are becoming frustrated. Therefore, we need to create a safety valve, a, you can say, illusion or a fake channel of communication between the people and the British, so that that heat and that pressure is vented out and there's no 1857 again. So the idea is that Aoyum and Dufferin, they are behind the establishment of the INC, and therefore INC was created by the British as a safe means of venting out anger which was developing at the grassroots level. Now, this theory has been questioned in 2 to 3 senses. First, there should be this 7 volume of intelligence report which Aoyum read. This were never found after independence, right? Not nowhere to be found in Calcutta or in National Archive, nowhere. Then, second would be a meeting between Aoyum and Dufferin, which is again not documented. And there was an attempt made by Hume, but it was not, basically, Dufferin did not meet Hume itself. Then there should have been some paper trail where there would have been money, something sanctioned for the creation of the International Congress by the British. That also does not exist. Therefore, we believe that the safety wall theory in the scale of plausibility is a myth created to sanitize the image of Aoyum after his death, so that the gun which later shot the British in the head, which in turn led to the destruction of the British Empire, was not created by Aoyum by his liberalism, but rather by conspiracy. So this was basically to sanitize the idea that Aoyum did not create the knife which killed us. It was rather a conspiracy which went wrong. Now, there is a corollary to this whole story, where safety valve theory says Aoyum used the Congress to become a certain, you can say, channel of venting pressure. The exact opposite was then argued by Gopal Krishna Gokhale when he started to hear about what is called safety valve theory from fellow nationalists. That is called as lightning conductor theory. Lightning conductor theory. Lightning conductor theory, which was propounded by Gopal Krishna Gokhale, says no, Aoyum was not using us. We were using Aoyum. He is the lightning conductor, which in turn then allowed us to create a nationalistic body, all India level, and therefore he was the one who absorbed all the British, you can say, gaze or criticism, or what is called as the idea that the British would never have allowed the INC to be created if there was no Britisher behind it. So the idea was that the lightning conductor was Aoyum. We used Aoyum rather than Aoyum using us. And this is exact opposite theory in that regard. Now, is this true? Again, we don't know on basically a scale of plausibility, neither basically to be fully plausible, because this is not black and white, it is gray. History or historians cannot actually capture motives and intentions. Therefore, we don't know if both is correct or incorrect. We believe that both have some, you can say, understanding behind them. Safety valve theory, most probably a myth. Lightning conductor theory, a way of saying that the safety valve theory is incorrect. Then the question is, then how do you explain the origin of the INC? And that is where there is a very, very important concept which comes through, that INC should not be seen as the creation of either AOUM or of Gokhale using AOUM. Rather, it should be seen as a culmination of pre-INC. There are pre-INC associations, be it the Madras Mahadan Sabha, be it the Bombay Presidency Association, be it the Pune Sarvajanik Sabha. These bodies were regional but nationalistic. So the INC should be seen as a culmination of a long drawn process of political awakening and consciousness, which had started to rise in the 1860s. And there was a organic and logical need for an all India level body. And therefore, Indian National Congress is not a sudden, you can say, body. It is not the creation is not a sudden event. It is rather a culmination of process of awakening from 1860s and 70s. And in 1885, the formation of an all India political organization had become an objective necessity. Now, why have I taught you in this sequence? Because this is how you have to look at the whole concept. If they ask you this question, discuss or tell us why did the INC get formed, you have to first talk about safety valve, then you have to talk about lightning conductor, and the real reason is neither it is the culmination of the concept of nationalism starting at regional level, then coming up through the ranks to what is called as a all India level. Now, please do understand one thing very clearly and very, very important. When we talk about the formation of the INC, the British created the INC or INC created itself? Over the long run, that question is immaterial. Why? Because this body gave us independence, and therefore there should be no doubt about the fact that it could have been created by the British, it could not have been created by the British, but it did give us independence. Therefore, its origin becomes immaterial, but you have to use this concept of culmination. Now, the next important question which comes out of this area is, if it is a logical culmination, then what happened in the 1860s and 1870s that actually this nationalistic consciousness started to rise? And this is where you have to understand that a new brand of nationalism rose that is called as economic nationalism. See, now, British rule in India was based on two pillars. The first pillar was that you perform sati, you burn your women, infanticide, dowry death, widow remarriage does not happen, child marriage happens. So, therefore, there was a social or moralistic justification that we need to be in India, because if we don't remain in India, you will burn your women, you kill your women. So, the social religious reform movement basically removed this problem or this argument from the repertoire of the British, because they said, okay, we perform sati, we'll stop doing sati. We will do social reform. So the first justification, the white man's burden, that justification went out of the context because social reform movement managed that first. So the second justification was economic development, that we are the only industrial nation in the world, the most advanced. Therefore, we will make India also into an advanced nation. This was the whole concept on which the middle class intelligentsia actually believed, and the indoctrination of the middle class intelligentsia also happened on this concept that economic development is coming. But between 1757 and 1860, now it took us 100 years, but personalities such as Dadabhai Naroji and thereafter who are called as economic nationalists broke this argument also, that you are not developing us, you are underdeveloping us. And once this realization sets in, the disillusionment is setting in, then nationalism takes a new brand and the INC becomes an objective necessity. So the expectation which the middle class intelligentsia, Bhadralok Bengali had was that the British will develop India into a metropole and it will become an industrial nation. there will be economic development, and they also accepted a lot of things thinking that is necessary. The fact that maybe deindustrialization is necessary, maybe land revenue settlements like this is necessary, maybe commercialization is necessary, maybe railways is necessary. Then after 100 years of all these processes working together, the disillusionment was that India was not going forward but backward, and poverty was setting in. Famines had become very, very common. Along with that, they could see, and this is what railways allows us to do. At a pan India level, they can see underdevelopment, death, destruction, destitution, and the realities now start to become very, very clear. And this is where all of these men then basically create a theory, first created by Dadabhai Naroji, and thereafter furthered by G.V. Joshi, R.C. Dutt, or M.G. Ranade. All of them are called as economic nationalists. The argument that Dadabhai Naroji said that India's underdevelopment was not given, but rather a product of British rule. G.V. Joshi would argue that too much expenditure is happening on the army. There is need for income tax. R.C. That would say that the analogy he gave was very interesting. That the moisture is sucked from the Indian subcontinent, but the rain happens in England. Therefore, there's a drain which is happening. M.G. Rande again pointed out that how no capital goods industries is coming, no heavy industries is coming. Therefore, all of these men now start to criticize the British and argue that you are developing India in the wrong direction. It is the underdevelopment of the developed. India was never like this, and the data which Dadabhai Naroji was quoting in 1901 and thereafter by everyone was available in England. That is why his theory was very, very important. And this is where he writes a book called Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. And this is where the un-British part we will discuss. But the idea is they are critical to this theory. They are important because they change the whole landscape of understanding. This is why in 1860s there's a surge in the idea that nationalism needs to be seen in a different way, and INC was a direct product of a logical need for an pan-India body and economic nationalism. So, economic nationalism plus the concept of regional nationalistic bodies, these two things converge together to create an understanding that the INC is a culminating point, a need of the hour. We also know through Oxfam now that $64 trillion was actually drained out of India over the, you can say, over the 200 years of existence of the British in India. And that is the drain amount per se. Now, when we have now understood why did the INC form, INC obviously had standard weaknesses, which we'll discuss under moderates. Why did the INC form? What is economic nationalism? Then we can now move towards the politics of the INC between 1885 to 1905, which is called as moderate mentality and moderates. Now, all of these men together are called moderates. W.C. Banerjee, Rashbihari Ghosh, Surendranath Banerjee, R.C. Dutt, Dadabhai Naroji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Firoz Mehta, Justice Rande, Naidu, Iyer, Anand Charlu, Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya, Hume Wedderburn, as it is British liberals, English liberals, who are part of the INC. Now, why are they called moderates? They are called moderates because of their mentality and their approach. Now, what is the moderate approach? The moderate approach is two-pronged. One, we will create awareness in the people that there is something called nationalism. We will tell them what nationalism means. But the second one was they had a belief. Now, pay attention. They had a belief that the British are not aware of the ground realities of the Indian subcontinent. They wanted to do good, but they were not able to. That is where poverty and un-British rule, that it is very un-British that the idea of nationalism was going against the idea of British benevolence. The idea that British wanted to do good, but they were not able to do good. And why were they not able to do good? Because they did not know what was happening. Therefore, through PPP, we are going to make them aware of the ground realities. And when we will make them aware of the ground realities, their sense of justice and their sense of, you can say, benevolence will come through, and they will do good in India. Now, what is PPP? The three P's: prayer, petition, and protest. Constitutional protest. We will tell the British through petitions, in which we will do prayer, that see, we are getting underdeveloped. Peasants are dying. Please help us. Commercialization happening. Please help us. Reduce the salt tax, please. So the idea was to appease, but also plead to the British that you are doing wrong in India. You may not know it. We are making you aware of it. And that is why moderate approach is considered extremely weak, because it presumes that the British wanted to do good but were not able to, and they want to reform colonialism. Now, when we talk about moderate mentality, moderate approach, there are very obvious weaknesses. Extremely elite. It's like a holiday, only 3 days they meet. Further, they're mostly middle class intelligentsia, intellectuals, product of British understanding. They're mostly upper caste, do not believe that the masses should be involved, do not believe that women should be involved. They are extremely conservative at this point of time in their approach, and PPP as it is not going to work. So when we talk about the demands also, that is reflective in the moderate approach and the approach of the INC at this point of time. Abolition of India Council, because Secretary of State is not able to do good because India Council is bad. New Indian members in the Executive Council of the Viceroy. Increase Indian participation, 50% elected representatives. Councils in Northwestern Frontier Province and Punjab. Budget to for us to agitate also. Right to appeal to Standing Committee of House of Commons against Government of India. That we will tell the Crown that you are doing bad in India. That is the naivety of the understanding. And over and above that, they also wanted a fund through which they could protest in India. So if you go by their demands, which is Indianization of the ICS or the ideas of having more representation, they want more employment in the British government, and therefore the idea is that they don't per se understand the overall understanding. So weakness is obviously upper caste, upper class, elite mentality, no involvement of the masses, educated elites who believed that only their PPP is going to work, and at the same point of time they believed in the inherent benevolence of British, and that is where the weakness comes. Now UPSC has already asked a question, what are the weaknesses? But was the historical role of the moderates just to ridicule nationalism? And the answer to that question is no. Moderates, as much as they have a very weak understanding of colonialism and are based on PPP, and it seems to be very weak, had a greater role to play. And that greater role is that moderates nurtured nationalism in its most critical stage. See, even when the moderates are talking about these things, the British used to say, Duffin used to say, microscopic minority, it is a factory of sedition, because the British only wanted the INC to take up issues related to social, not political. And that is where moderates were criticized left, right, and center, even though when they were criticized by the extremists later, the British also used to criticize. It's not that the British were happy with the moderates. Moderates protected nationalism in its infancy stage so that extremists could exist later. Extremism cannot exist without moderate politics. Everybody goes through their moderate phase and then goes into their extremist phase. You first exhaust the moderate mentality and the moderate approach, then you go to extremist understanding. That is where you have to also further understand that when we talk about the moderates and the extremists, you should know that moderates in a way are the, you can say, the British are in their most watchful at this point of time. They would have crushed Indian nationalism if they had rejected colonialism. That is why they are reforming colonialism, because they want the British to, in a way, not become too watchful of the INC and crush Indian nationalism. They wanted Indian nationalism to move out of its infancy stage to the adolescent stage. And once it becomes a youth which is angry and wants to reform, the moderates had become obsolete and their mentality had become obsolete. And that moment comes because of what happens in the 1900s. And Curzon is the one who pushes moderate mentality and moderate nationalism towards extremist nationalism. You have growing self confidence, better education, and the dissatisfaction with PPP. 1891 Act was very, very, you can say, very useless, did not actually incorporate anything which the moderate said. It was created more disillusionment, and with better westernization, understanding of freedom, fraternity, all of these things come together and extremism rises. And this is where we have to understand how did Curzon create extremism and what is Swadeshi movement. So we have now pivoted. There are three parts to this story. We have now pivoting to the third part. First part of the story should be clear. INC safety valve. How was it created? Economic nationalism. Second part of the story is moderates, weakness, role, historical importance. Now we go to Curzon, Curzon's politics, partition of Bengal, Swadeshi, and then Surat split. So what are the policies of Curzon, which later became important for communalism also? There is the 1899, 1904, and 1905 acts, which he or what things he did. In 1899, he brought in Calcutta Corporation Act. When we talk about Calcutta Corporation Act, this reduced the membership of Indians, non-official members in the Calcutta Corporation, reducing the number because people are becoming nationalistic. 1904 two acts, Indian Universities Act, which said that if you have to appoint a teacher, you get approval from the government so that teachers don't become nationalistic and enter into the colleges and the universities. And official secrets acts. Official secrets acts are multiple, but the official secret act amendment 1904 basically was on the idea that we will now censor newspaper, we'll do censorship and more censorship than what we were doing previously. 1905, which was basically related to what they did in 1903. In 1903, the partition of Bengal was announced, and on 16th October 1905, the partition of Bengal happened. Now, together, all of this pivoted moderate mentality, moderate to extremists. So that is why extremists are 1905 to 1915, 10-year period is called extremist phase of early nationalism in India. Now, why is partition of Bengal and Swadeshi important? First, you should know why are they partitioning Bengal. Their argument was Bengal, which is this big, big province, is too big to manage, administratively not possible, and has 78.5 to 83 million people. And the problem is very diverse, but two major religions, Hindus and Muslims, three major languages, Bengali, Odia, and Hindi. Now, the partition of Bengal, as quoted by the British, was for administrative purposes. But the reason was not administrative, it was based on two principles. And the basic purpose of the partition of Bengal, as reiterated and revealed by Risley, the Home Secretary to the Government of India, is Bengal united is power, Bengal divided will pull in different directions, different ways. That is what the Congress leaders feel. Their apprehensions are perfectly correct. They form one of the greatest merits of this scheme. In this scheme, one of our major objects is to split up and weaken a solid body of opponents to our rule. Basically, the Bengali Hindu nationalist was the problem. So they wanted to break the back of the Bengali Hindu nationalist in Calcutta. How will they do it? That is where the partition of Bengal happened based on two principles. The first principle was in Eastern Bengal and Assam, there will be more Muslims than Hindus. And therefore, here the religious principle was applied, which is the religious minority, the Bengali Hindu nationalist will become a religious minority in this sector. Though it is not absolute, 18 million is to 13 million, 18 million what we call as Muslim, 13 million Hindus. Now, this is more obvious that Curzon wanted to introduce the concept of divide and rule. And the idea was very simple, create incongruency in the interest of the Muslim and the Hindu. And the idea that you are better off in a separate province because the Muslim elites, not the Muslim people, Muslim elites would get better representation, more seats in a divided Bengal than a united Bengal because their population in absolute terms is actually not higher. It is just that when you divide this line in the way Curzon is dividing, then you get this 18 is to 13. Obviously, in this space, the Hindu population is going to be higher than the Muslim population, but they wanted to break the back of the Bengali Hindu nationalist in this sector also. Therefore, why was this line divided like this? Because in this sector, the linguistic principle was applied. Linguistic principle means that now there are more Hindi and Uriya speakers than Bengali speakers. So what happens is Hindi and Uriya speakers outnumber the Bengali speakers. So therefore, in this sector, he becomes a linguistic minority. And in this sector, he becomes a religious minority. This is the master stroke of Curzon in that regard, that he is using a very interesting principle. By creating this line like this, in one sector, he is using the principle of language, 17 million to 37 million, Hindi and Uriya, and based on religion, 42 out of 54 in Hindu majority, but that is where this principle comes through, and 18 is to 13 in the other one. Therefore, this is the master stroke. In this sector, religious minority. In this sector, linguistic minority. The Bengali Hindu nationalist is not going to be able to be garner support or create any form of what is called as momentum, because here religion is going to be against, here language is going to be against. So this was the intended purpose actually and the overall logic. Now, when in 1903 the partition of Bengal was announced, from 1903 to 7th August 1905, the Swadeshi movement goes through what is called as its moderate phase. And when it goes through its moderate phase, there is prayer, petitioning, new newspapers which come through. There will be close to 70,000 signatures on one of the petitions sent to the British that the partition of Bengal should not happen. However, once they realized that the partition was not going to be annulled or it will not be repealed, then on 7th August 1905, the Swadeshi resolution is passed by Ashwini Kumar Datta in the Calcutta Hall, and a body called the Swadeshi Bandhav Samiti is established, which will then take the spirit of nationalism forward. And that is where we believe Swadeshi movement now came into existence. From outcry of 70,000 people in 1904-1905 to the 7th August 1905 Swadeshi movement and the Swadeshi movement resolution at Calcutta Hall, with the formation of the Swadeshi Bandhav Samiti and the final call that on 16th October 1905, the partition of Bengal will happen. Swadeshi movement enter its real stage. Now, Swadeshi movement is considered a watershed because of the following reasons. These new forms of nationalism and struggle came into existence, and that is where in turn we see the rise of a new brand of nationalism. So, boycott of foreign goods. Till this point, the British had never been boycotted at an economic level. Economic nationalists said that they're here to loot, so boycott foreign goods. Therefore, 5 to 15% reduction in the import of British cloth and liquor because of the boycott. Further, boycott the institutions. So, students left schools, lawyers left courts. Everybody actually did their part in boycotting. Women did not wear glass bangles made in London. The washermen did not basically even wash English cloth. Women did not use foreign utensils. Further, the Pandit said that we will not accept any prasadam which will have British sugar. So, therefore, everybody went into everyday form of boycott. At the same point of time, because you are boycotting, you need something as you can say alternative. So national education, the National Education Council came up, schools, colleges developed, Swadeshi enterprises, the Bengal Chemicals Factory, the what we call a Swadeshi Steam Company. There are multiple enterprises which came up as alternatives. But what makes this movement so interesting is self-reliance and Atma Shakti. The idea that we can do anything. Swaraj became a word which became a part of our overall understanding. The vocabulary changed. Popular festivals, melas, in jatras, in folklore, the idea of Swadeshi entered. public meetings and processions happening left, right, and center. 70,000 people, 80,000 people coming together in one meeting. 50,000 rupees was just as it is collected for the Swadeshi movement. In the cultural sphere, we have the Bharat Mata imagery, Amar Shonar Bangla, the what we call as Bande Mataram becoming very important songs and symbols of this movement. And thereafter, Tilak will try to take this to Pune and Bombay. Ajit Singh and Lal Lajpat Rai will take it to Punjab. Is Syed Haidar Raza to Delhi, Chidambaram Pillai to Madras, and there will be attempts to take Swadeshi beyond Bengal, but not very successful per se. But the idea is what makes Swadeshi a watershed moment is because new form of nationalism came up. Extremism had now become a norm. Now, very important point. Swadeshi movement is a watershed because of all of these factors. Why did the Swadeshi movement start? We also know. We also know the intended purpose. But the unintended purpose was what was going to happen in the INC. And that is where we have to understand how INC went into a tailspin because of the Swadeshi. Three sessions come into context: 1905, 1906, and 1907. This is the last set here. This is actually the last set here. If we understand everything till this point, then we just have to discuss what is called as the Surat split. We have to discuss the concept of the Surat split. Now, how did the Surat split happen? Now, when we talk about Surat split, you have to understand that there's one rule, and that rule is that if an INC sessions happens in a certain province, the president of that province cannot be from the same province itself. For example, Gopal Krishna Gokhale cannot be the president of a Bombay session. Similarly, Surendranath Banerjee cannot be the president of the session which happens in Banaras. So, when the Banaras session happens in 1905 of the INC, Gopal Krishna Gokhale was actually the president. Now, when we talk about Gopal Krishna Gokhale, in this meeting, there was an attempt made by Lal Bal Pal, which is Lal Lajpat Rai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and Bipin Chandra Pal, that let's take Swadeshi beyond Bengal. But in the Banaras session, only the Swadeshi resolution was accepted, and even the moderates were ready to accept. In 1906 session, which is in Calcutta session, a session in which people believed that the tension was rising, Lal Balpal wanted it to take Swadeshi beyond all India level movement. In this, Dadabhai Naoroji was the president. Now, in this session, there's a chance that things would go wrong. But what happens is that Dadabhai Naoroji uses the word Swaraj in his speech, that Swaraj in line with other dominions of the British, we want Swaraj. He did not define what is Swaraj, but within the empire, very conservative definition. But Dadabhai Naoroji using the word Swaraj was a very big thing. So a split was avoided here also. Now, 1907 session was originally planned in Nagpur. If it happened in Nagpur, then Bal Gangadhar Tilak could become president. But the moderates moved it to Surat because he comes from Bombay presidency. Surat is in Bombay presidency. This made the extremists extremely angry that you have shifted the place of the session itself because you think that we are going to sabotage everything. And therefore, in the Surat session, it was an explosive session, lot of tension, everybody is fighting with each other. And now a shoe is hurled on the dais. That shoe will hit Firosha Mehta and Surendranath Banerjee. And in the Surat session, there will be a proper fist fight and the extremists will be expelled out of the INC, and INC will now be dominated by moderates. This is called the Surat split. Surat split, Raspberry Ghosh was the president. Now, please do understand one thing. Surat split will make the INC redundant for the next 10 years or 9 years till in 1916 that the Lucknow Pact will happen, which we will discuss in the next episode of the National Movement series of high yielding areas. So I hope that you understand why did the INC be, why was the INC formed? What is the safety valve theory? What is the concept of lightning conductor? You also understand what is economic nationalism. You further understand what is moderate nationalism. You also further understand what is the concept of partition of Bengal, Swadeshi, and Surat split. If all of this is perfectly fine, I will see you in the next episode taking this story forward. And if you like this session, you have to like it, share it, and subscribe to our channel. Further, you have to give the test on the special session. The link is given in the description box, and you will find it in my Telegram group also. And you also have to comment if this is helping you. Thank you. Take care.